Serious, people who have found a secret room or space in their house. How long did you live in the house before you found it and what was in it? What was the eventual outcome of finding the room? There is a door in our bathroom and it was just a small closet and we put some cleaning supplies in it and didn't give it a second thought. Then one day we saw the door was open and thought the cat was in there. So I walked into the very tight space and to my amazement there was another door around the corner that you can't see just looking straight in. It was slightly ajar. So I opened it and it led behind the bathtub. And lo and behold, the cat is sitting in there chilling. I figure if God forbid we ever need it, it could kinda be like a panic room. Build a throne for your cat so when someone else finds it, they just see your car sitting in a throne. I found a second basement in my grandparents' house 20 years after they died. There was a door with a handle that fell out and everyone kinda just forgot. I went down there last week and played pool with some friends with a vintage table made by my grandpa when he was 17. Keep that table. Forever. And it starts to wear down. Don't replace it. Just keep it as a memento to your grandfather. IDK if this counts, but I was a live-in nanny at one time in the family and I would hear noises coming from the attic a lot. The mother would complain about missing beer, cigarettes and dishes silverware. An upstairs bookshelf would always be tilted and leaned up against a wall under the attic door. The mother thought the teen daughter was doing it. The kids and I thought the house was haunted. One night, the mother and kids were out of town and I came home from my boyfriend's house pretty late. I heard the sink running upstairs and thought it was the ghosts. On my way up the stairs, a man appeared at the top of the stairs. I screamed my head off and ran to my room downstairs, locked the door and called the police. Stayed in my room until the police got there. They found insulation from the attic in the sink. It turns out a homeless man had been living in the attic for months. We found bushes and cigarette butts up in the attic and empty beer bottles. He had been using the bookshelf to climb up into the attic. I was traumatized for a while. Contractor here. I was doing a renovation of a 4-unit craftsman apartment building, and the owner had previously noticed a void in the floor plan. He asked that we open that area up. We cut a small enough hole to peek in, and found a room that was approx 5 feet x 5 feet. The strange thing was the room had been sheetrocked, taped, texture, and painted from the inside. No doors, or any type of opening, just 4 walls and a ceiling. The only thing we can think of is someone finished it from the inside then dropped down through the subfloor to the garage below. No clue why. There wasn't an obvious subfloor patch either. It was really strange. My sister and I shared the basement room of a house that we were renting. The owners had slept in that room when they lived in the house. All of the kids slept upstairs. We noticed that one of the panels of the wood wall looked loose, so our brother carefully pried it off. Behind that wood panel was a secret room that had monitors lining the wall along with a random assortment of items. The monitors were not hooked up to anything, but they explained why each room upstairs had holes in the corners of the ceilings. My mom ended up asking about it to make sure, and yup, the owners had cameras in their kids' rooms and we found the creepy headquarters. We moved out pretty soon after that. It was a crawl space behind the hobbit door all the way around the outside of the 2nd floor up in the house where I grew up. It was my secret clubhouse for a decade. I miss that space. I found an entire bedroom in my basement recently. It was behind a door I never went in the furnace room. Very interesting, and it wasn't dusty or anything. It was carpeted. Made me wonder why the old owners never disclosed it. You cannot have bedrooms in the basement without egress, so likely they never listed as a bedroom. On moving into a new home, we noticed a light switch on the wall that didn't seem to be connected to anything. Switching it did nothing, and it was mounted on a wall that was just above a small alcove that had a bench seat built into the wall. A few months later, my mum sat on the bench seat and noticed that the bench top moved a little. Standing up and looking at it, she then noticed a sliver of light showing at the edge. With some force, she was able to slide the whole bench top off, and found a compartment about 2 meters wide and 1 meter deep, with racking and lighting that was connected to the mysterious light switch. There was also remnants of soil and plastic coverings. Long story short, the previous owners grew their weed in there. My parents cleaned it out and I believe it's now where my mum stores her wedding dress. In our old apartment about 4 years ago, there was a weird back corner of shelving in the kitchen that we could never get anything in or out of. As we were moving out, we finally figured out how to jigger it open and found a 50s 60s era long white nightgown, super crunchy stiff cotton and smelled concentrated dust. Okay, that's creepy. There was a space between walls that just seemed to go nowhere. We rooted around possible spots a door could be. We ended up finding it in the empty closet at the end of the hall. It opened up to a hidden supply room. It ended up becoming my family's game room. I live in an old house and in my sister's room there is what looks like built-in storage in the wall. When we were looking to get a radiator fixed in her room we had a guy in to check it out to see if there was already a boiler between her room and mine. Turns out there was a whole room back there with servant bells, fairly big too. Only problem is that it doesn't have a floor. We think there might be some interesting stuff in there but we can't get to it, which sucks. Crawl space in the basement. It wasn't really hidden but the items inside were. Found a Playboy and a few empty beer bottles. Found it a few months after moving in. I was going into the closet and there was a tiny door in the back. My roommates didn't know it was there because they never had need for the closet till I moved in. It was just a crawl space that had a small hole in one of the walls and some writing on the wall from the previous tenant. We used it as storage till we moved out. It creeped us out so we didn't spend much time in there when we had go in it. My family just moved out of our story and a half house that we had lived in for around 2 years. From the front of the house it was easy to spot 3 front-facing windows, but upon inspecting the upstairs, there are only 2 accessible windows. I never investigated as it was my younger siblings' rooms. I was in college, and I didn't like the low ceilings of the upstairs. When I was helping move out, I decided I needed to check out what was up. There was a small, almost unnoticeable, door panel on the slanted ceiling that gave access to the 3rd window. It was filled with old insulation and a very used pillow but was overall a very small space. My siblings wanted to show me the other secret room they had found also. In the center hallway also upstairs there was a 1/4 size door, handle and all, stashed behind a cupboard that you could scooch out enough to get behind. It was also insulation filled, without the dirty pillow, but was a much larger space that just seemed unfinished. My siblings used it as a hideout when chores needed done. This is my first comment ever. Excuse anything I did incorrectly and I guess I'm supposed to say I'm on mobile as well. We found a secret compartment in the back of 2 of our kitchen drawers about a week after moving in. The people living here before us were tweakers so we have suspicions of what they used it for. My parents live in an old abbey from the 13th century. Very normal layout so not much in the way of secret rooms but after some redecorating they found a fresco of grapes possibly from the 13th or 14th century. So this was just me being dumb. But I lived in a mining town with a company subsidized house. We'd been moved across the country to live there and after 3 months in one of their backup houses we were moved into our actual place. Prior to that my husband had just moved to the country, and we'd moved ourselves a couple times and we were just done with moving into new places at this point. It was a 4-bedroom house, each bedroom with a wardrobe, 2 living areas, 2 linen closets and just heaps of space for us as a young couple. One of the bedrooms had a glass sliding door that led into the patio and although it was the biggest bedroom, I didn't want to sleep in there because I have always had recurring nightmares about wrestling to close a sliding door on bad guys who are trying to break in at night. So, we set that room up as a bit of an office and overflow room, made another room our bedroom and didn't really think about it. We were there for 6 weeks before my husband realized there was another door inside the wardrobe which led to a second bathroom. Moved into a house a few years ago and was renting. The owner said one room was an owner's closet and preferred we didn't go in, though the door was locked so we couldn't anyway. Bought the house outright a few months ago and kicked the door in and there was a whole basement down there that I didn't even know we had. Most of the contents were boxes full of random papers and such, nothing terribly interesting, but it was cool going through everything the first time like a detective or something. First house I rented had an old hallway that was walled off, and the bedroom door moved to the other side of the room. Complete hallway, carpeted, painted, light fixture with a switch in the wall. Didn't make much sense that it wasn't used as an expansion of the bedroom. Currently I'm living in a very large house built in the 1800s. It's been split up into studios and mine came with a sofa. When I was reorganizing the room I moved the sofa and behind it is a tiny door about 2 feet high. It just leads into a bit of space that's just filled with insulation. A few years ago however I lived in another smaller house just down the road. Usually in terraced houses built around that time there is a small storage space under the stairs. The door had been painted over many times with gloss paint and was pretty stuck shut, but after a few days curiosity got to me and I levered it rather than the little cupboard that I'd expected. I was greeted with a set of somewhat creepy red painted stone stairs that led to a basement room. Nothing was in there save for a wood sideboard. It looked like it was previously someone's hobby workshop. At the back there was a sort of stone fireplace. I assume it used to house a boiler. This little room came to be dubbed the murder basement. We have a closet under the stairs, and inside that closet is a tiny door that leads to a crawl space. The room wasn't a secret. We knew about it when we bought the house. For some reason we never opened it until years later though. My siblings and I decided to go into the crawl space one day. I can't remember why. We ended up finding a life-size cross-stitched portrait of a nude woman. It was kinda weird and we assumed the previous owner left it. I don't remember what we did with it though. My grandma and uncles found a secret room in their house. The house is from I believe 1820ish in New York, US. The story goes, one of my uncles noticed that there were 2 windows on the outside of the house on that side, but only one inside. It was a weird mystery for a bit. One day, grandma went in the attic and found a door in the floor. She opened it and it went to a tiny room with a missing window. She went in the room and waited for the school bus to come home and waved from the window. The theory is that the house may have been a stop on the Underground Railroad, but I'm not sure why the room had a window if they were hiding escaped slaves. The house was built and owned by Quakers for a long time and Quakers were mostly abolitionists, so it could be true. It had a window because in the days before electric lighting, every room did. If people could live in the house for years without noticing the window discrepancy, it was good enough. I was 9 at grandma's watching TV in the living room. A door I had never seen opened and a little old man walked in and asked if someone could come look at some problem. There was a holding apartment with a stairwell over there. Grandma had bought a big old house that used to be a boarding house and it had a separate apartment. I never realized she had renters until that moment. Also another hidden stairwell leading up to a kitchen with a kiln. My dad's office had an old freight elevator that lifted with a rope. A hidden bridge above it led to a hidden door that was a secret entrance to the 2nd floor of the parking garage. I have recurring dreams of finding secret spaces in weird houses. My childhood home had 2 large bay windows, one in the living room and one in the home office. Growing up I always thought it was funny how if you flopped down hard enough on the cushion it would make a hollow thud noise. Anyways, after living in that house for 13 years, on the day I was moving out my mum lifted up the bay window cushions in the living room and then opened a latch type door that was hidden under the cushion, and pulled out a box which contained all my school portfolios, certificates and my legal documents. I was both confused and amazed. How I never actually figured there were cupboards there is beyond me. A hidden door in the closet, found a bunch of marbles and also found out that the builder of the house was a marble champion and people used to hide valuable items in the walls of their house. Lived there for 17 years and my boyfriend found it after a year of us dating. After 15 years, we found a second basement in our farmhouse. My father had removed one of the large rocks that makes up the basement wall. I crawled under the log frame a few feet and there was a wall made of baseball-sized rocks. I knocked those down and entered an old root cellar. There were shelves and shatter mason jars. And bones. Lots and lots of bones. We dug a tunnel so we could access the room. Found many secret areas in my current house behind wood panels. First secret door was in the basement. It led to an underground bomb shelter with separate air intake and water line. I knew of it prior to buying the home and was a major selling point for me. Stocked with a radiation detector. Used for storage. Second room was only 3 feet high, had a light, a bunch of toys, crayons and drawings. That one I didn't find for a few months. After about 2 weeks I discovered a few hidden panels with shelves with toys, magazines, books and some clothing. Nothing interesting. After a year or two, I located a suspicious wood panel on the floor, pried it open a bit and was able to see a full-length staircase leading to a brick wall. I haven't bothered to fully open the panel yet. Imagine being so jaded at all the secret rooms you've found during your life that you don't bother seeing what's behind the brick wall at the end of the secret staircase. Dizzying lives you all led. My parents found out almost a decade after buying their current house that the guest room has one of those panels you can pop out and use for storage between walls. The builders had failed to attach a knob to it, and my grandmother, who used to live in that room, had never thought to mention it. So bizarrely I had a dream, whilst still living in my parents' large Victorian house with them, about a whole extra section in the top of the house. Hard to get into as it had been sealed off to people intentionally, but if you squeezed through the gap, which most couldn't, it was all perfectly preserved. I remember old coins on a silver dish on a dressing table and loads of normal yet so detailed items. Anyway, I had this dream a few times, and eventually told my parents, who looked at each other and laughed and told me there was indeed a sealed off section in the house that no one has been able to access. I still to this day have not made it in, despite trying hard, and my parents won't do what needs to be done to get into it as it is too much for them to take on. I am dying to know if I'm right and my dream was true. Not my house but my friend's. Their mom has a condo with a hatch to the attic right above my friend's bed. When we were repainting their room, I decided to use the painting ladder to check it out. My friend told me the light switch was behind my head. Fully creeped out from the dense darkness, I fumbled for the switch. Once it was on, holy crap, it was the size of the entire roof of the condo, meaning others could poke their heads up. Being inside a humongous empty, half-lit place with only your head sticking up was freaky. Never went back up there, lol. Keep thinking about the time in Malcolm in the Middle that Hal discovers whilst clearing out a packed cupboard that they actually have a second bathroom and desperately try to keep it secret. Back at the family house, I have since moved out. We found out recently a section of the wall in the loft could be open and led into a little crawl space, probably big enough for me, a 5 feet 1 foot female, to lay down in comfortably. We lived there since I was like 9, 23 now, and it was just found. It ended up being decked out with blankets and pillows and is now the thunder shelter for our dog, Nora, who has doggy PTSD from being displaced in a tornado before we got her. Before this she would hide behind the toilet whenever there was a storm, or in general really loud noise. We'd always know when an argument got out of hand because she'd hide, but now she has a nice little cubby area that she goes in and it seems to help her out a bit. Friends of mine rented a holiday villa in Mexico years ago. They stayed there for 3 weeks. It had been advertised as 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, so they were kind of pissed off to find that there were only 2 bathrooms and the 4th bedroom was kind of small. The day before they were leaving they did a little bit of a cleanup. One of my friends went to put the broom into the closet beside the fridge. He opened the closet door only to find that it led to a massive room with a bathroom and its own balcony. The first night that they had gotten there, one of them had tried the door and thought that it was locked and assumed that that was maybe where they stored cleaning stuff or extra linen. After that, no one thought to try the door again until it was accidentally opened the day before leaving. The only thing hidden about this is Wyle's common sense. The story of the murder room. I grew up in an old farmhouse, 2 floors and a basement. The basement was creepy as heck anyway because it had rickety wood slat stairs, stone walls, was dimly lit, in an L shape with dark corners, and had, I crap you not, a single hanging light bulb around one of the corners. Oh, and the spiders. So many spiders and cobwebs, and these spiders turn bright white when they die for some godforsaken reason. Anyway, at the back of the basement it always seemed cut short. So one day brother and I decide to search under our old back porch that was overgrown with weeds at the time. And we found a door to another room that had been walled off from the rest of the basement. Well, door is probably an overstatement. It was kind of a hanging half door made with weathered to-fours with big metal hinges. It wouldn't move when we tried to open it, so for years we jokingly referred to it as the murder room, daring friends to go inside, which no one would of course, and the legend grew at what could be in this room. If it was for storage, why would it be walled off from the rest of the basement? Eventually we could lift the door ever so slightly, but it was pitch dark inside, and when my big brother pushed me in one day, our mom would end up telling us to stop messing around back there. That the old door was dangerous if it swung down on us, and she didn't want us playing back there anymore. Of course this only made the interest grow, but while freaking out, I had made a discovery while inside. Even though I couldn't see, the floor was made of dirt. What the heck was going on? One day our mom had the old carpets thrown out and finally fixed the wood floors under them like she always wanted to. Eventually, when cleaning out a tiny closet under some stairs, I noticed that some of the boards made a distinctive square. It's right over the murder room. I pulled up the square and saw the same dirt floor I felt years before. My girlfriend and I ventured inside and found a small chair and a child's school desk. Take it as you will, I guess, but it freaked us out. Later I found out many buildings in our town were linked to the Underground Railroad. Take it as you will, but that was the story of the murder room. Spiders turning white will be one of two things. 1. There's some fungi that infect spiders, cordyceps style. 2. What are more common is that when they grow, spiders shed their exoskeletons and leave behind an empty spidery shell of the old exoskeleton that may well look white as it's now empty of spider. Once I found a small attic at my dad's old house. I wrote Dave Mustaine for president on the wooden floor and never returned. My dad moved back in with my mom the next year. In my basement, there's a corridor that's blocked off by rubble, wood, cement pieces, etc. I always assumed there was like a room back there. I would call it the death alley because my basement is creepy in general, and I'm pretty sure that corridor has something dead in there. More likely mice. But turns out, it was just another way to get out in the backyard. The old owners of the house decided to block it off from outside by making a really crappy cement deck that they didn't even bother finishing. I'm super disappointed by it. Not really exciting as you may imagine, but read on Reddit that ovens often have a big drawer under them to keep food warm without actually cooking it in the oven. Looked at my oven, stood up, took out the freaking drawer I've never even noticed in 4 years of living in that house, and it turns out it had some pans in it, which I of course bought new thinking they weren't in the house. People claim it keeps food warm, but I've literally only ever seen those drawers filled with pans. Secret passage in the house where I grew up. Went from the upstairs hall to the closet in the master bedroom. Not really something one thinks about every day, especially when it becomes full of middle class clutter, but for some reason, the presence of a secret passage makes me want to tell everyone. I have no idea why. Hey everyone, there is a secret passage in the house where I grew up and I don't know why I'm yelling. Last time I visited the house, my father had extended his commitment to the bit and put a small door over one end and a bookcase in front of the door. It was adorable. The thing is, the second secret space we didn't know about. It was really just a crawl space, a closet-sized chamber which we uncovered when they were doing some remodeling to finish the basement, and about 500 booze bottles poured out and shattered all over the floor. The previous owner, a rampaging alcoholic, had been concealing his empties from his wife for years. The space had been hastily plastered over before they lost the house and we moved in. Now it's a pantry. My mum and dad moved into 2 shops in PT Lonsdale near the shipwreck coast of Victoria. A few years later, a drain on the roof blocked. When the gutter overflowed inside, all of the carpet was ruined. They tore up the carpet. They found a trapdoor under the floorboards. Inside the hidden basement was 1,600 plus Schiphol antique stacking ceramic pots. Dad never told me how much he got for them before he died, in spite of me asking a number of times. Within a relatively short time of our find, we extended our house, bought an empty block and built a holiday house, and purchased both the shops we were renting. I'm sure the fact that we were renting and didn't own the property yet contributed to him being very secretive about it. Finally, something I can answer here. We had been living in my house, that I still live in, for about 2 years when I went to use the bathroom in the basement, and as I went to sit on the toilet, a huge bit of the wall fell on me. Nothing big enough to hurt or anything. Of course I nearly crapped myself of fear, pulled my pants up and was gone. Got my dad, and when we looked in there it was just a bunch of old books and like building crap. Fast forward a few months later, My dad is gone on a trip and it's just me, my mom and my sister at the house. We had all gone out that day and were gone the whole day. We come back home and found our front door completely destroyed from our dog. She had scratched off all the paint and even messed up some of the wood underneath. We were all a bit weirded out cause she's a really good dog and doesn't do stuff like that, but my mom told me it was nothing and she probably just had to go to the bathroom. Anyway, later that night I was checking the whole house, which is something I did every night due to me being an incredibly paranoid person. So I went to check the basement and I kid you not, the door to the bathroom door was completely open, which we always keep shut cause we didn't want the cats or door in there, and the wall to the secret room had been moved to the side and the light in the room was on. I go to get my mom and tell her everything and of course we're all very scared. All the females in my family are on the small side and we live in Germany, so guns in the house aren't very common, so basically no easy way to defend ourselves. Luckily we have a cop friend who we call and he comes and checks the whole house but finds no one. After he's done with the house he checks the front door and the lock looked like it had been messed with along with the inside of the door part. Nothing ended up happening but someone was 100% in our house that day. Very spooky and we all slept with baseball bats next to us that night, lol. So I lived in a Medicean villa just outside Florence during my high school years boarding school, and the place was obviously filled up with secret passages and rooms. Half of the place was actually locked up for safety protection reasons. I got the chance to see the keys room. Only the keys master was allowed in and the amount of keys was massive. Needless to say, the place was astounding and brimming with secrets. One day during my first year, while sleeping in dormitories, we found a door about 50-60 centimeters tall just next my friend's bed. It was frescoed like the walls, so not noticeable at first sight. It opened on a dark passage, which we later found out to be used by maids and servants back in the day. Still creepy to know there was a hidden passage, easily accessible, connecting all the bedrooms. We used to pull a lot of pranks on each other, but luckily no one used that passage. One other time I was spending time in a passage room I thought I knew well. There were fake doors on both sides, or so I thought. Imagine the amazement when I pull the handle on one door and it actually opens up on a spiral staircase going up and down. It was pretty dark and I don't know what I was thinking of finding. Anyway, there were a couple of storage rooms, and going down it led to a closet in one of the classrooms downstairs. Easy way to sneak people upstairs, lol. And up to infirmary area on 3rd floor. There was also a passage in one of the classrooms leading to a church outside. I have also heard of a mosaic room under the fountain in the garden. A passage leading to one of the major palaces in Florence used by Medici family to run away just in case. And I think I had found it, but I never had the courage to go in. Also found a secret washroom and many other things. I usually went exploring on Sunday morning. More than 10 years later, I still dream about exploring that place and my subconscious has filled up the empty spaces with dreams and expectations. Not my house, but my uncle's house that he inherited from my grandfather. Almost my entire family, including me, lives in the Netherlands. It was my uncle's birthday, and me and my cousin were just running around in the attic and the attached barn when we found a door without door handle in a wall. We tried to open it but it wouldn't, so we went to the rest of the family to ask what the door was. They didn't know and went to take a look themselves. They managed to open the room. It was empty. We don't know for sure what the room was used for, but we probably know. Turns out my grandparents gave shelter to a couple of Jewish kids, don't know how many, in World War II, and that room is probably where they hid. Not the most interesting story, but wanted to share it anyway. Not really a secret, but in my grandma's house there was a little room that you could only get to by going into her bedroom. I don't remember how long it took for me to find it, but it was pretty much used as storage. I remember finding one of the first Barbie dolls made in there. Heaps of old stuff from when she was a kid, I guess. It would probably still be there, but her house is falling down now. There was space under the stairs that was just walled up instead of adding a closet. Maybe 50 sqft total. It was full of construction scrap and 120 ounces Pepsi bottle about 2/3 full of pee. My friend's parents lived in a Edwardian townhouse. 3 floors, in the UK. On the middle floor was the family bathroom, which had a tiny loft hatch barely big enough for a skinny person child. They opened it up a few years ago when renovating the bathroom and found it to be an entire room. completely empty, seemingly unused, and on the top floor with no access, no windows, and no fireplace to suggest it had been that way since it was built. Found some sort of dungeon when I was 15. You could only enter it from outside of the house. It seemed adjacent to the wall of our basement, and the opening was on ground level. I flashed a light in there for a bit, decided it was way too creepy to look through, and hid my bongs in there for the next 2 years. Well, I found one, but it wasn't in my house. My aunt was pregnant for the second time, so she and her husband were searching for a house because their apartment had not enough space for one more kid. So they wanted the help of my father, brother of my uncle, because he had more experience in buying a house, and I came with him just because I wanted to. I was like 12. We were in 4 or 5 houses, and in one house I found, split from the main group, a second basement because at one place the floor sounded weird. There was the ladder to the second floor. I told my father and he told me not to tell anyone about it. So in the end my uncle bought the house, and later on we told him about the second basement, and it seemed like it is as big as the first one. The art of the deal. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.